Super excited to be moving into week 3 of our School of the Prophetic series. And I hope you are just as excited as I am as we are developing this series. School of Prayer was phenomenal. School of the Prophetic is going well. And we'll see where we go. We know exactly where we're going after this, but we'll see where we go after this because they kind of bullied me into, that's exactly what I'm going to use, bully. Y'all bullied me into like 2 or 3 more weeks of School of Prayer. And so we'll see what happens at the end of School of the Prophetic. All right. Once again, share with somebody, let them know we're here, we're live, and we are ready to jump into week 3 of School of the Prophetic. All right. So let's talk. Let's do a little bit of review, and then we'll go into some new stuff. All right. Last week, we spent some time laying foundations, and a part of my format, a part of my style of teaching and educating is that I'm always going to lay a solid and a strong foundation because I do not want us, those of you that are members of Emerge Church, and then those of you that are connected to my voice or connected to this ministry, you may not be a member, but you connected to this ministry. I don't want us to be a people that can super and hyper explain the mysteries and the mysterion, and we can float in the nebulos and the outer space with the deepest and the best of them, but we don't have any pragmatic principles that are the foundation of why we believe what we believe, why we teach what we teach, why we do what we do. So I'm always going to spend time as an apostle. One of my apostolic assignments, according to 1 Corinthians 12, is to ground the church in truth. I'm a minister of foundation. I'm a reminder that the foundations of the church through the gifts of God are still secure. So it's going to be my responsibility in everything that we do to build solid foundations. All right. So we started off talking about prayer and the prophetic. And I know we want to launch out into the deep, and we'll do that. But before we do that, we got to lay a strong foundation. So we talked about prayer and the prophetic. Last week, we talked about purity and the prophetic. And tonight, we're going to stay in that same place. And to be honest, I knew last week before I started teaching that this purity in the prophetic in our School of the Prophetic was going to last a little while. So I got tonight, and I'm already telling you we got one more week in it. So, if purity in the prophetic bores you, grow up and let it be made born in your belly so that God can purify you and you can be a strong prophetic gift. All right. So last week, again, we talked about purity in the prophetic, and there are a few key points from last week's lesson that I want us to go over and highlight real quick. Number one, we cannot restore prophetic credibility and we cannot restore purity to the prophetic with charisma, with popularity, and with shallow prophetic declarations. Restoration of purity to the prophetic movement must come and needs to come and has to come through purity and purity only. Not just in what we say, not just in making sure we get our information and details right, but it's got to be the content and the container. It's got to be the word and the vessel. We've got to have purity in all parts of the prophetic. Right? We also discussed a very, very, very important principle called prophetic restraint. Prophetic restraint. And what I shared with you about prophetic restraint is that it's not necessarily you not having the word. It's not that you don't know what to say. It's not that you don't know how to say it, but it is the spirit-driven discipline that gives you the ability to discern and determine this does not need to be shared at this time. This does not need to be shared in this way. Oftentimes, in-person prophetic ministry, you'll see some prophetic gifts. If they're normally prophesying to people over the mic, when they get to one person or a particular situation in a person's life, they'll move the mic away and whisper it in their ear. That's a part of prophetic restraint because listen to me, I am more concerned about my prophetic responsibility to steward this word well in this person's life than I am about being impressed and labeled for accurate details and accurate information. If being impressive is the goal of your prophetic ministry and your prophetic assignment, you have already come into covenant partnership with contamination in your prophetic assignment. All right. So prophetic restraint is necessary because what it does is it gives us the ability to hold the revelation until God's timing and intention are fully discerned. Sometimes you can have accurate information about a person and have an accurate prophetic word, but even giving that word outside of the time and the pace and the cadence and the volume and the tone of God's intention for them to receive that word will contaminate the purity of that prophetic word. Does that make sense? Are you hearing me tonight? All right. One of the other things we talked about is that premature prophecy is just as dangerous as false prophecy. I stand on it. Premature prophecy is just as dangerous as false prophecy, primarily because a word out of season can mislead a person just as much as a word that was never spoken by God. Hope that makes sense. One of the other principles we established last week in purity in the prophetic is that discernment must lead to intercession and not condemnation. You cannot manage people and treat people according to what you discern, especially if your discernment only works to the length and the end of what's wrong or what's bad. If you can look at a person's sexual behavior and immediately condemn them into whoredom, but not see that that is a reflex or a response to abandonment or rejection, rape, molestation, self-hatred, self-sabotage, whatever the case is, there is something hiding behind the behavior that needs to be investigated. And this is why you cannot throw people away based on what you discern, because your discernment needs to lead you to intercession. By the time you sense or discern or feel that this person is this way, whatever the case may be, they could be a liar, and you discern that, you sense that they're a liar. That's not your license to judge them, to condemn them, and to imprison them to the sentence of always being a liar. The reason you came into contact with that information is because it should lead you to a place of intercession. All right. Last thing that I'm going to move into some new stuff for this week. The prophetic is not merely a spoken word. It is a womb. I hope you hear that, because you got to receive that in multiple areas of your life. The prophetic is not just a word. It's a womb. It carries, it incubates, and it delivers the will of God without contamination. I hope that makes sense. Hope all that's clear. Hope that's all review for you. And as our pastors would say, note takers are history makers, and they got fancy and added world changers too. So knee. That's what he gave them to do. That's what he gave them when he held their side. And we tell the Lord, thank you. All right, so tonight we are going, y'all play so much in church. We're going to add to the conversation because the precedent has already been set. All right. We have already established that purity in the prophetic cannot begin with more accurate prophecies. We're not going to clean up the current climate and the current culture of the prophetic by just adding more accurate information on top of inaccurate information or inaccurate characters. If we're going to purify the prophetic, it has to begin at an accurately aligned life more than an accurate prophetic word. Because if your life is accurately aligned to God, what you prophesy will be as well. Hope that makes sense. When we talk about an accurately aligned life, we're talking about a life that is in full submission to the will of God and to the will of the God that you claim to represent. All right? We have to establish this as a reality because false prophets and even false prophesiers for this case, because not everybody watching and learning and growing, not everybody is a prophet. Okay, not everybody is a prophet. Not everybody is a prophet. Is this it? Okay. Bryson, turn me up. I said not everybody is a prophet. All right. Not everybody is a prophet, because there are people who are saying they're prophets and they're not. All right. So not everybody is a prophet. But a false prophet and a false prophesier is not born of inaccurate details. I'm going to say that again. What makes a false prophet or a false prophesier is not an inaccurate prophecy. False prophets can have accurate information, but the source of that information is contaminated. I really hope this is making sense to you. So one of the critical areas that forms a false prophet is one of the areas that the prophetic community does not spend time in investing into and investigating. You want to know what it is? It's a word called character. It's the word character. All right? Character is both the mental and moral qualities that are distinctive to an individual. Character is both the mental and moral qualities that are distinctive to an individual. It's also who you are when no one is watching. Now, you got to hear that. You need to hear that in view of this text we're about to go to. It's who you are when no one is watching. Lastly, it is the internal framework that holds up the external expression of your gift. It's not just what people come into contact with externally, but it is who you are internally that upholds the expression of that gift. Both the prophet and the prophetic vessel must have character that matches the call. Now, I know that sounds like I'm cursing in church. But I said both the prophet and the prophetic vessel, the prophesier, the prophetic dancer, the prophetic painter, the prophetic potter, I don't know, the prophetic goldsmith, whatever he gave you to do, whatever he held your side for, whatever expression of the prophetic you have, both the prophet and the prophetic vessel must have character that matches the call. And we live in an age where many ministry gifts manifest with incredible power, with incredible precision, and incredible charisma. But without pure character, the gift becomes tainted. Let me say it again. Right now, if you survey our side of the body of Christ, the lens and the sphere you have access to, all right? If you survey that, there are a lot of gifted people, a lot of talented people. They prophesy to you and tell you the color of your Adam's apple when you were 5 and what you ate in 5th grade. Powerful gifts. I support it all. Let's do it. However, that gift becomes tainted if the character is not pure. We cannot be impressed with an expression of a gift without checking the character and the fruit of character to match the gift. I'm gonna leave that alone. You need a character to match the call because your character must be strong enough to represent the Christ you're speaking on behalf of. Hope that makes sense. Every gift and gift type is a representation of Jesus Christ. If you're laying hands on people, you're representing him. If you're prophesying, you're representing him. If you're casting out devils, you're representing him. All right. And that's important to understand because your character must be submitted to the Christ whose name you speak in. If you can't find that behavior in him, then you should not allow it to be permissible amongst you because you represent him. And you know, I know we deep. We wonderful. We spicy. You know, everybody got fancy tongues. I love it. Let's do it. However, one of the fundaments, listen to me, not of ministry, but of Christianity, is that your behavior may be the only representation of Christ that some people see. That's why you can't show your tail at your job. Now, listen, some of you feel like this is too elementary of a principle to be volume. But if you check the recent log of your behavior, are you really representing Christ with your behavior? All right. This is more than about ministry. That's about the Christian lifestyle. You know, I know we like to stack ministry responsibilities, and I'm for it. There are qualifications and standards for ministry, but some of y'all won't even get to the standard and qualifications for ministry because you do Christianity poorly. You're a strong gift and a poor Christian. And that makes your gift a sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal. All right, let me move. You need the kind of character where three things are standard. Number one, you need the kind of character where the life you live does not offend the gifts you carry. Oh, Jesus. I'm going to say it again. You need the kind of character where the life you live does not offend the gift that you carry or the gift that you are. Which simply means this: you can't be a spokesman for God and a liar at the same time. I think a phone is ringing. Primarily because if you are supposed to speak for him, but you've got an outstanding balance of lies in the earth, when you speak on his behalf, your integrity ends up contaminating the purity of what he wanted to communicate. Are you listening to me tonight? Glory to God. All right. Number two, you need the kind of character where the integrity of your vessel matches the weight of your assignment. Say it again. You need the kind of character where the integrity of your vessel matches the weight of your assignment. Which means this. Take a deep breath. Take a deep, breathe. Come on, breathe. What am I saying? I'm going to say it again. The integrity of your vessel needs to match the weight of your assignment. In short, comparison will lead you to compromise if you don't reconcile that your call comes with requirements. Let me back up. I want to give you that again. I want to make sure you hold on to that. The integrity, you need the kind of character where the integrity of your vessel matches the weight of your assignment. When you compromise your standard because you're comparing the standards of other people against yours, it's because you have not measured the weight of your assignment and the standards that come along with that task. Will they get away with it? They don't have your responsibility. The integrity of the vessel has to match the weight of the assignment. And they get passes and permissions because their assignment doesn't weigh what yours does. I hope I'm making sense in your ears tonight. Let me move. Number three, you need the kind of character, all right, where the testimony of Christ is not defiled by the contradiction of your conduct. No, I hear you. I hear you from all around the world. I hear those of you that are alive. I hear those of you that will watch in the future. I'm going to say it again. You need the kind of character where the testimony of Christ is not defiled by the contradiction of your conduct. Apostle, what do you mean? I'm going to give it to you on the side that I know you're not expecting me to come from. Take a deep breath. If we preach that God is love, am I preaching? You can't live like he's a God of hate and judgment. I hear you, Pastor Shamari. I hear you. You can't preach that he's a God of love. And when people come around you, they feel hatred. You can't preach that he's a God of grace. And it works for you and your weakness, but not for how you treat other people. He's a God of grace when you want him to get your little cousin Mookie out of jail, and he killed 5 people. Okay. But you won't extend that same grace to somebody else who forgot to speak to you when they walked in. Oh, they got an evil spirit. What do you have? What's going on here? Huh? All right. So you need the kind of character where the testimony of Christ is not defiled by the contradiction of your conduct. I want to put my finger on that for a little while longer, because your conduct is not always seen by the people you go to church with. I think a phone is ringing. See, apostles not always watching your character in your everyday life. So your character is not measured, watch me, by your Oscar-winning performance on Sunday and midweek. Remember, when we talked about character, I told you it was your commitment to do what's right when nobody's looking. How saved are you when you're not around other Christians? Is compromise permissible because don't nobody know you singing the praise team? Is compromise permissible because nobody know you prophesy and lay hands at your job? It's ho. Take a deep breath. Breathe. Breathe. Is compromise permissible because other people are compromising? Hold on, I ain't done. I'm gonna let it go in a minute. Is compromising permissible because you had a bad week at work? So then you okay with compromise because in your mind, compromise is justified through chaos. I got a bad week. God can understand. I need a little sin too. I understand. I got you. You need the kind of character where the testimony of Christ is not defiled by the contradiction of your conduct. What people look at you and say, if that's their God, I don't want it. I don't need it. Whatever they got, I want the opposite. Okay. If we are going to recover and restore the sanctity of prophetic ministry, we must confront the silent scandal of compromised character. Yeah, go ahead and just pass out a bucket, please, Brandon. Okay, just I think Isaiah was a part of your bucket team one time. Isaiah, pass out some buckets too, man. Okay. The rest of y'all, I can't see who's on here because I told y'all I'm at our Zoom church and we simulcasted our Facebook church. You understand? So if y'all comment and I really can't see you, I'm just calling names by the Spirit. Isn't that good? It is. All right. Y'all stop playing. Go to 2 Kings real quick. I got a lot to read because I want you to hear everything that's coming out of this text. 2 Kings chapter 5. If we're going to recover and restore the sanctity of prophetic ministry, we have to confront the silent scandal of compromised character. And tonight, that's exactly what we're going to do. Come on, 2 Kings, chapter number 5. And then we're going to verse 15. And I got a lot to read. I'm reading to the end of the chapter. I wish I had a reader. But I grew up preaching without one, so I'm good. I'm good. All right. 15. And he returned to the man of God. Let me hurry up before I start hooping in the middle of this scripture. He and all his company, this is referring to Naaman, right? And came and stood before him, and the man of God is Elisha. And he said, behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel. Now, therefore, I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, this is Elisha speaking, as the Lord liveth, before whom I stand. I don't even have time to deal with that the way I want to. I don't. I'm gonna move on. I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he, Elisha, refused. And Naaman said, shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules, burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord. In all caps, that's Adonai. And this thing, verse 18, the Lord pardon thy servant, And when my master goeth into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, when I bow down myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon thy servant in this thing. Verse 19. And he said unto him, go in peace. So he departed from him a little way. But Gehazi, somebody shout, but Gehazi. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, behold, my master had spared Naaman this Syrian in not receiving at his hand that which he brought. But as the Lord liveth, look at that deception, I will run after him. Look at a lie in the name of the Lord, deceit in the name of the Lord. He said, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. Verse 21. So Gehazi followed after Naaman, and Naaman saw him running after him. He lighted down from the chariot to meet him and said, it's all well. If I had time, I don't have it. If I had time, I would preach right there about the dangers of stolen honor. Because the moment that Naaman seen Gehazi, he connected him to the integrity of his leader. That's what makes Gehazi later deception so evil and volatile, because you stole credibility from a leader you were privately dishonoring. I don't have time to teach that right now. But this generation loves public flattery and lives in private dishonor. Don't worry, that's not why I'm here tonight. Naaman saw him running after him. He lighted down from the chariot to meet him and said, is all well? And he said, all is well. My master, you lying booger, hath sent me, saying, behold, even now there be come to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments. And Naaman said, be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags. I'm almost where I need to be. With 2 changes of garments, and laid them upon his servant, and they bare them before him. Verse 24. And when he came to the tower, he took them from their hand and bestowed them in the house, and he let the men go, and they departed. But he went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said unto him, whence comest thou, Gehazi? This little booger said, thy servant went no whither. 26. And he said unto him, went not mine heart with thee when the man turned again from his chariot to meet thee? Listen to what Elisha asked. Is it time to receive money and to receive garments and olive yards and vineyards and sheep and oxen and men servants and maid servants? 27. The leprosy, therefore, of Naaman shall cleave unto thee and thy seed. How long, church? Forever. And he went out from his presence a leper as white as snow. Told you we already talked about purity in the prophetic. And tonight we need to have an often overlooked but deeply necessary conversation about purity in the prophetic. And I'm not just talking about how accurately you can hear, how sharply you can see. We're not dealing with how fluently you prophesy. We've got to press into a deeper issue. And the deeper issue is the integrity of the life that carries the word of the Lord. All right. Let's move through this. God is not looking to anoint talent. That's not the goal. He's not easily enamored by charisma like we are. He is not deceived by our titles, our platforms, our followers, our likes, our shares, our real. He's not fooled by any of it. God is interested in using vessels whose character can carry the weight of his voice, watch me, without compromise. Stewards who will host his integrity through the lives that they live. And one of the conversations that we don't often have enough with budding and awakening gifts and even emerging ministry gifts, no pun intended, is that following God costs you everything. Look at that. Look at that. What's in you arguing with me is a little bit of that you got to let go, that you don't want to let go. But that's right either way. Following God costs you everything. And most of you risk the reality of full surrender because you are contending with God to hold on to what he wants you to let go of. Hold on, I'm coming through here. Give me a minute. And immediately you can talk about sex, your ex, your private and unspoken desires and fantasies and fetishes. But we need to put just as much pressure, watch me, on your inability to give up the need to be a victim. Ask me why. I said, ask me why. Because pain can contaminate your gift as much as pornography. I think your recap starts right here. It's easy to put pressure on sex and drugs and alcohol as contaminants for your gift. But the truth of the matter is if you defend your right to anger, it will rob you of purity in your gift just as actively as being an alcoholic can. And while it's easy in considering what contaminates a gift to jump to the things that seem most pleasurably carnal, we can jump to the hot list, to the, the big sins, all that kind of stuff. But if we don't deal with the contamination in your soul, watch me, their unwed sex is just as toxic as your unforgiveness. So 2 Kings chapter 5 is built on the backdrop, it's 7:33. It's built on the backdrop of a miracle for a man named Naaman. Naaman is a military commander in the army of Syria, all right? And he has leprosy. And, he's trying to figure out who's going to heal him. One of the midwives in his camp says, hey, there's a prophet over in Israel. They get the information of Naaman. Naaman says, okay, hey, let me figure out what to do. The prophet gives Naaman an instruction to dip in the Jordan. Naaman doesn't like it, but he finally responds because one of his servants talk him into it. And Naaman gets fully healed of his leprosy. I'm not going to deal with all of that. In response to being healed, he returns to Elisha and he offers him wealth and gifts and whatever you want that I have, you can have. Watch me. Elisha refused the gifts. I want to show you something because I want to deal with what has the potential to be a cultural lie. Elisha had no issue with the gifts themselves. You don't like that. Because when he addressed Gehazi in verse 26, he didn't address an issue with the gifts. He addressed an issue with the timing. He said, is it time to receive gifts? Okay. The reason I got to deal with that is because Elisha's refusal of the gift was not because receiving the gift was going to prostitute the prophetic. Oh, I got to defend this. Because in Israel, it was customary to come before the prophet with a gift. Not only so, we've seen the prophets in the scriptures be blessed by the hands of the people that they've ministered to. Primarily, to substantiate my claim, one chapter before this, in 2 Kings chapter number 4, is when that woman in Shunem decides she wants to make this bedchamber for the prophet onto their house. This same Elisha received this room that they were adding to their house, and watch me, in response to the gift that they gave, he prophesied and gave her a son. So there is no overarching issue with the prophets receiving gifts in response to the prophetic and to prophetic ministry. Elisha's specific issue You got to read your Bible. His specific issue was not about the gifts, it was about the time. The greater value about this miracle was not about what Elisha was going to receive. It was about salvation being attached to Naaman's miracle. Are you listening to me? All right. So Elisha tells Gehazi this was not the time. And that was based off of what Elisha discerned. He said that there is some other reason attached to this, that I don't want to bring my personal gain in connection to what God just did. I'm getting ready to show you something. Here's where the first part of wisdom is. Contaminated prophetic ministry does not begin with inaccuracy, but it is born through unseen, unchecked, and unsubmitted motives in the heart. I'm going to say it again. I know that was a lot. I got you. Here's what you got to understand. Contaminated prophetic ministry does not begin with inaccuracy, but it is born through the unseen, unchecked, and unsubmitted motives of the heart. All right. This text reveals to us that Gehazi was deceptive, that he lied in the name of Elisha, that he manipulated Naaman with stolen honor, and that he lied to Elisha when he returned. All right. And what you have just intravenously come into contact with is that Gehazi's actions reveal a descent, not of words, but of will. Hold on. Gehazi didn't just misspeak. He was being intentionally deceptive. He did not falter in hearing or understanding. He fabricated in the name of his leader. Again, Gehazi manipulated Naaman. He lied to Elisha, and his hands moved so swiftly, but only as a result of a heart being already distant from the weight of his prophetic call. All right, take a deep breath. Because what I want to know is, how often are we guilty of the same thing? Naaman made this offering to Elisha in response to the miracle that Elisha's prophetic word provided for him. Elisha refused to receive it, but Gehazi, in his immaturity, was impressed by what he could receive. And what I want to know is, how often are we guilty of being infatuated with the results of being labeled accurate prophetically? And we are more infatuated with being labeled accurate than we are stewarding the integrity of God through pure prophetic ministry. We have made the gain of prophecy fame and respect. Ain't nobody bring you a donkey, I understand. But if your goal through prophesying is for people to see you and know that you prophesy accurately, then the gain of prophecy is fame and respect and repost and being booked and busy and all those things. And at the same time that the goal of your prophecy and prophetic ministry is to be seen and known, you end up abdicating the seat of your prophetic responsibility. I hope I'm making sense tonight. And again, you may not be chasing money, garments, donkeys, bird, all that kind of stuff. But if you're chasing a stage and an opportunity, you are guilty of impure prophetic ministry. When the goal of the prophetic, not a benefit, when the goal of the prophetic, not a result, but when the goal of the prophetic is personal gain, it's been contaminated. All right, we'll move on. Gehazi became blind to the purpose of the prophetic. Elisha did not prophesy for applause. He did not prophesy for compensation. He did not prophesy for recognition. As a matter of fact, hold on, Pastor Shamari preached this. The first time we hear of a reference externally of Elisha's prophetic ministry, it had nothing to do with how well he prophesied. Our reference point for him was, we know he's a prophet because he poured water on the hands of Elijah, not how accurately he prophesied. Am I making sense to you tonight? So Elisha wasn't prophesying because he was looking for somebody to pat him on the back and tell him how well he prophesied. That wasn't his goal. He prophesied to Naaman so that this Syrian outsider would know that there was a prophet in Israel, and if there was a prophet in Israel, that there's ultimately a God in Israel. That singular focus safeguarded the purity of Elisha's office. And we see this verifiably and clearly because Naaman, by the time the miracle is complete, he says, now I know I can't even worship the God of my master because I've come into contact with the one true God, and he's in Israel. He's Israel's God. Does that make sense? All right. Gehazi, however, lost focus because watch me. In losing focus and in losing the point of the prophetic and losing focus on the purity of the prophetic, he invited corruption into what had once been consecrated. All right. And I know you think I'm talking about Gehazi, but I'm really talking about you. Because it's possible with your fasting in January self to start off pure, but when your motives deviate from the truth, the gift gets contaminated. You started off pure. You started off in prayer. You started off in fasting. Started off in your Bible. But then you deviated from the truth and it contaminated your gift. And here's the truth of the matter. I'm almost done too. I know culturally, everybody's running from toxic relationships. But I wonder how many of our favorite preachers are toxic gifts. And we're unaware. Hold on. Because you got to see what I'm about to show you. Because I got to show you what you're about to see. Gehazi didn't end up with leprosy in the text because he prophesied an inaccurate word. Gehazi ended up with leprosy as a result of an uncrucified and an impure motive. Motive gave him leprosy, not an inaccurate prophecy. A lack of focus opened him up to a disease, not a missing detail prophetically. Which is why we need to review what I taught last week. Accuracy is not proof of the prophetic. You remember Acts chapter 16. They're headed to the synagogue. The damsel is there. She says, these men are the servants of the Most High God that show us the way of salvation. Her information was accurate, but it was demonically sourced. Her insight did not come from intimacy, but it was sourced by a familiar spirit. All right? And the fruit of counterfeit and corrupted prophetic ministry always manifests in three things: tainted motives, contaminated execution, and perverted intent. Come on, I'll give it to you again. The fruit of counterfeit and corrupted prophetic ministry is always going to manifest in tainted motives, contaminated execution, and perverted intent. Let me quantify that. When the prophetic is weaponized to manipulate people, it ceases to be holy. When a word is released for any reason other than conveying the heart and the mind of God concerning his will, it becomes manipulation. If your prophetic utterance is designed to prove a point, to satisfy your ego, to soften someone's heart towards you for personal advantage, or to position yourself as a necessary link to the voice of God in somebody's life, you are no longer walking in the spirit of truth. You are trafficking the spirit of witchcraft. I know it's tough. It's all right. We're going to get through it together. If you prophesy to the person interviewing you for a job because you want to manipulate them into giving you the role and responsibility, you're practicing witchcraft. Say amen. If you prophesy to somebody because you got a desire for personal gain, because of how accurate your prophecy is, you operate in witchcraft. When you prophesy to prove a point, it's rebellion. When you use the word of knowledge to win somebody with the intention or with no intention of discipling them into the image of Christ, that's sorcery. When you prophesy to manipulate and control people through prophetic language, or suggest that they won't be able to hear from God outside of you, you're practicing witchcraft. And some of y'all following global practitioners. I'll add more to it before I take it away. I promise you that. You listen to a global witchcraft practitioner before you listen to your own leader. And that's out of order. And you don't have to say amen. You folks that work Christian witchcraft because people leave your church and tell them they're not going to have purpose. God's not going to, I'm talking to you. God's not going to use them. They're going to fail. I'm talking to you. They're going to fail. They're going to fall. That's Christian witchcraft. It's manipulation. It's parlor tricks. It's spiritual bullying. You are not the barometer for who God can and cannot talk to. Just because somebody leave your church don't mean that their gift is going. Okay, let me. Okay, the people I'm talking to already offended. Let me talk to the other side. If you left somebody's church and they word cursed your gift, you better uproot that word curse out of your belief system, not out of your, because it doesn't have permission to land in your life. But if it lands in your belief system, it will manifest. Ain't nothing wrong with your capacity to hear from God just because you left the person who taught you how to hear. They don't have a monopoly on God's voice in your life. Say amen. That ain't prophecy. It's a mirage of prophecy masking a hidden and wicked agenda that ultimately leads to personal gain, whatever the personal gain is. Even if you prophesy to somebody to manipulate them out of leaving their church to come to your church, it's still witchcraft. All right. This is why we cannot use accurate information as the litmus test or the barometer for testing prophetic accuracy or prophetic purity. I'll give you this. I'll give you 2 points, and then we out of here. It's 7:50. Go to Genesis chapter 3. Go to Genesis chapter 3. Mm-hmm. All right, Genesis chapter 3. Go verse number 1. Because I really want to give you this. You know, I feel like the devil's a little mad right now. And me and the devil, we don't have tussles. My victory is never undeterminable. I always win. So the tussle didn't work with me. He lost before he tried. That's what he gave me to do. Found the devil. Where he at? Those people be asking me, they say, what's wrong? Why you be hitting people in their chest? I'm knocking that door down. Boom. All right. Genesis chapter 3. Go to verse number 1. This is what it says. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God had said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. Verse 4. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also her husband with her, and he did eat. All right. I want to show you two things in Genesis chapter 3, and then we're moving. I'm done after this. Verse 4 says, And the serpent said to the woman, Ye shall not surely die. For God doth know in the day that ye eat thereof, that your eyes shall be open, and you will be as gods, knowing good and evil. All right. Can I show you something? It ain't deep. It ain't spooky. It ain't high level. I just want to show you something. This is why we cannot use accuracy as a measure for pure prophetics, because the devil just gave Eve accurate information. Just think. After she ate the fruit, and she even turned and gave it to her husband, did they surely die? Or they didn't fall dead? They didn't turn into a puddle of dust. God didn't strike them down with lightning. So what the devil told her was true. Here's my point. Satan also had accurate information, but his motive was manipulative. That's why we're not patting you on the back because you call somebody's name. Hello? Is it me you're looking for? I can see it in your eyes. I said, we're not patting you on the back because you call somebody's address. Because Lucifer, he had accurate information. He knew what God said. He was aware of what God told her. So the serpent's statement contained partial truth, but cloaked in a deadly intent. I'm talking to you about how motive can contaminate the prophetic. Watch me. Yes, Adam and Eve's eyes were open, and they came to know good and evil. What he said was true. It was factual information. But Satan distorted God's command because he had a wicked motive behind his accurate information. If you prophesy for any other reason than revealing the heart and mind of God, motive has contaminated your pure prophetic ministry. His accuracy in information was employed to deceive and not enlighten. He did not have the intention of communicating the heart and mind of God. And you and I will fall in the same satanic trap if we prophesy with polluted intentions. What this demonstrates for us is that accuracy does not equal righteousness or rightness. Because the devil, your adversary, had accurate information. All right. Here's the last point of this, then we'll move to the next one. When we put the truth In the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon of manipulation. See, he had an ulterior motive behind telling Eve that she wasn't going to surely die. And so the right information in the wrong hands became a weapon of manipulation. He manipulated, tricked, and wooed her into accomplishing his own desire. This is why you and I need to guard ourselves and stay in a posture of pure prophetic ministry. I hope I'm making sense. Here's the last point in this, and I'm moving to my second point, and then I'm done. Jesus identifies in John 8 Satan as a liar, and not only a liar, but the father of lies, which shows that his primary tactic was to mingle the truth with deceit in order to twist perception. Okay, I'm gonna pull out of that. When you contaminate prophecy with impure motive, you are guilty of impure prophetic ministry. It becomes satanic because you have a truth in your mouth, but a motive in your heart, and it contaminates the intention of God. It is no longer a word from the Lord. Now it's a lie in the name of the Lord because you are using it to manipulate your own purposes and intentions. Here, all right, I'm done. Here's the last thing. The last thing. It's 7:58. I want to show you this. Go to verse 5. Genesis 3, verse 5. Go to verse 5. Gen 3, verse 5. You there? Read. For God doth know that in that day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open. And you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open. Verse 5, your eyes shall be. Your verse 5, your eyes shall be open, indicating that right now they are not. Is that fair? Is that fair? All right. I know you Bible scholars, you know. If he's saying God knows your eyes will be open, it's fair to conclude that what he's saying is right now your eyes are not open. Go to verse 6. I promise you, this ain't nice. I'm not stretching this. I'm in the text. Go to verse 6. Because I have a problem with verse 5 and 6. I got a problem. Bryson, I got a problem. Pastor Ani, I have a problem. Director Bibles, I got a problem. Verse 5, verse 6. Verse 5 says, for God doth know that in the day that you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open. Go to verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, when the woman, hold on. When the woman saw, how you see with your eyes. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, not only so, watch this next clause because you don't believe me yet. Not only did she see it was good for food, and that it was pleasant to thee, but verse 5 just told me that God knows that if you eat of the tree, then he knows your eyes shall be opened. But verse 6 says, when she saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eye, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit and did eat, and gave also to her husband. Verse 7. It puzzles me. Verse 7. Look at verse 7. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew. I don't have time for that. They were naked. Okay, hold on. Verse 5, the devil says, God knows that if you eat of this tree, your eyes will be opened. which gives us a safe indication that they are currently closed. I know this because verse 7 says that after they did eat, that their eyes were opened. In verse 5, she could not see. They could not see. In verse 7, their eyes were opened. And now they're able to see what they could not see before. But it's not verse 5 that gets me alone. I'm going somewhere. It's not verse 7 that gets me alone. It's verse number 6. It's verse number 6. Because in verse 5, she couldn't see, y'all. And then in verse 6, the woman saw. And then not only did she see, she saw that it was pleasant to the eyes. You know my second point tonight? Satan can give you the power to see. The ability to see is not sacredly exclusive to the gifts of the Spirit. I just told you in verse 5, she couldn't see. And then I showed you in verse 6 where the same woman who could not see sees a tree and decides that it's pleasurable to the eye. And then after they ate, their eyes were opened again. So where did they get this sight from in verse 6? Satan gave them the ability to see. See, because Eve had been around the tree before this. She knew where the tree was. She knew what tree God was talking about. And she had never watched me. She had never looked at it that way. But when Satan gave her the ability to see through his lens, watch me, she was able to see an accurate fact, but she was blind to the truth. She was able to see that the tree was desirable, good for food, and pleasant to the eye, but she was blind to the fact that she was being deceived. This is the reason. I'm gonna let this go. This is the reason why I'm not impressed when people say, I see something going on in the Middle East. Yeah, Satan can give you the ability to see too. You should have said amen 5 minutes ago. I'm trying to hurry up. I'm trying to let you go. I see something happening on the border of the United States. I'm unimpressed. Because sight is not exclusively a gift from God. The devil can open your eyes too. Verse 5 says, Satan said, God knows if you eat this, your eyes will be open. Which indicates that they are currently closed. All right, and this is the same bait of Satan used to lure many of you into mixture. Talk about you and your candles. You, your candles, and your chakras. You, your candles, your chakras, your crystals, your tuning forks, your sage, your white magic, your dark magic, your yellow magic. It don't matter. It's all mixture. Ask me why. Because you're dissatisfied with the state of your current capacity. If God desired for you to see any more than what you've seen thus far, he would give you the ability to see further. But dissatisfaction with their current state opened their ears to the bait of Satan. This is why y'all run around reading horoscopes like it's the Bible. You know more about a rising moon and a setting phoenix and an obtuse left angle star. He that's what he need. You know more about that than you do the scriptures. But it's mixture. And it's often born on the altar of dissatisfaction. You're not satisfied with what God said to you, so you got to go seek another talking spirit. You're not satisfied with what God has communicated with you, so you asking your dead grandma, your dead abuela, your dead tío. All right. And when you're dissatisfied and try to lower your standards and enhance your gift, you end up in error. You don't want to spend time in prayer. You want to go open your third eye. I got you. Because that's not even why I'm here. I'm almost done. This is why I'm here. Verse 5, Satan indicates that God doesn't want their eyes open, implicating again that they're currently closed. Which brings me to this last thing. Adam and Eve, their eyes were open, but not to divine wisdom. Not to divine wisdom. They were able to see in facts, but they were not able to see truth. While facts presented the fruit as edible and beautiful and good for the eye, pleasant to eat, they did not see the truth that Lucifer, Satan, was deceiving them out of their instruction. What's my point? When they ate the bait of Satan before they ever ate the fruit, it opened their eyes to see, and their sight was rooted in the fact that Satan gave them the ability to see. Purity in the prophetic safeguards you from allowing Satan to manipulate your gift for his intention. The only reason he wanted them to see this tree was good to eat was he wanted to deceive them into disobeying God. And in order to safeguard purity in the prophetic, you got to make sure that you have not given your eyes over to satanic entrapment. All right, I'm done. I'm going to leave it alone. And we'll continue next week. All right. I hope tonight blessed you. I hope you heard something from God. I hope you got some conviction. Hope you got a check in your spirit in order for you to hear what God is saying to the church, and in order for us to purify prophetic culture and purify prophetic ministry as a whole.